Good evening, everyone. Um, I believe it's Sunday. I lose track of days. I've been working on trying to eliminate the glare on my glasses, and it's just pissing me off. But I don't know. I lost my Cabela's hat. I don't know where it went. It might be downstairs somewhere, or I'm not sure. I'll have to look for it. So I just had to kind of fix my hair the best I could because I usually have it up. So anyway, today is Sunday, and we had to end up going to my bank because I don't have a bank here. It's like at least 2 hours away, and one of my mental triggers, if you want to call it that, is lights and sirens, ambulances, fire trucks, rescue vehicles. Um, Sends me into a tailspin. I just lose it. It is a major trigger that I've been trying to work on. And I tell myself, it's okay, it's okay. It'll, go by. And my therapist, he's like, well, don't look at it as somebody's hurt. Look at it as they're trying to save someone. Well, needless to say, since then, I've only had a few instances and it doesn't work. I know somebody's hurt. Um, or at least, I can say I assume somebody's hurt. It's just the way that my mind works. And the reason it's such a trigger for me is when my son, who was 8, um, got stuck in a snowbank. I'll try to keep this part short because it's not pretty. But 6 days before Christmas, 2002, so it was December 19th, 2002, we got 14 inches of snow, and he was playing outside, and he's a very responsible child. And we had some things to take care of. And I believed that the guy who lived downstairs was out in the shed working on his snowmobile. So I left my son downstairs outside to play in the snow. And our golden retriever was with him. And I didn't really think anything of it because how many people play in the snow and build forts and and play in the snow? It was Wisconsin. Um, everybody I've ever talked to. Oh yeah, I used to do that. I used to do that all the time. So it wasn't anything abnormal for me to allow him to play in the snow. His little brother was 3.5, and my son was 8, and I was cough or itch or have an issue with every time that I'm recording. And it's funny because I'm just going to go a little off for a minute. But if I'm washing dishes or anything where I can't itch my nose itches. I mean, I can itch my nose now, but yeah, I'd rather not. So anyway, my son got stuck in a 14-inch hole that he was digging, and he was head first. And when I saw him, I yelled at him because, no, that was before that. I had yelled at him for tearing a hole in his new snow pants. We didn't have money. Snow pants were expensive. So anyway, I went to look for him because I called and called and called out for him, and I didn't get anywhere. I had slippers on. I had, pajama bottoms because it was really cold, and we had spent the whole morning shoveling. We had 14 inches of snow. And I could have taken him to school because they just called a late day and they didn't call off school. So he stayed home. I should say I let him stay home instead of driving him all the way to school. the reason I stumble a lot is because my brain thinks faster than I can talk. So anyway, I'll slow down here a little bit. Instead of taking him to school, I let him stay home. I didn't feel like getting his brother ready and everything to take him to school. And we lived out in the country on 20 acres of a horse farm that always had been a horse farm. And this house was known to be haunted for several reasons that I can't mention. And we rented the upstairs, and some terrible things had happened there that I sort of found out about later, and this was just another thing, and I didn't know at the time. And I found him, and all it was his boots and his snow pants, and our golden retriever was next to him, and I believe by the marks that she was trying to dig him out. Because what had happened was the snow had melted around him. It first had, it melted around him and then froze and trapped him, so he couldn't get out. He had his torso and his head and his one arm in the hole and his other arm out. And I believe he had the bucket in the hole with him, or bucket and shovel, I'm not sure, because he was digging a hole, and got stuck. And I tried to pull him myself, and I wasn't strong enough because he was frozen. It was like almost like a tomb, and I couldn't get him out. So I went and got the girl downstairs and screaming, of course, and get me the phone, get me your phone. And I had to call 911. We did manage to pull him out, and it was bad. And that's where I get a lot of the PTSD and the trauma and a lot of the emotional bits. But the reason, back to where I was, the reason why the lights and the sirens and the ambulances and fire trucks, now you can kind of guess why it's a major trigger for me. I had ridden in the front seat of the ambulance that they took Tony, that's my son, that they took him to the hospital. They had fire trucks blocking off all the streets, all the roads, to let us get through in a hurry. The driver got on not the walkie-talkie, but the CB, and he said, get Theta Star, which is the helicopter, get them on standby. And I looked at him and I yelled at him. I was pretty emotional. And I said, don't get them on standby, get their asses down here. And he called back and he told them, no, we don't want them on standby, we want them there on the ground when we get there. And miraculously they did. They did what they could in the ambulance on the way. I'm turning around screaming for him to breathe, and I'm just screaming at him. And we made it to the hospital. The roads, we got 14 inches of snow, so the roads were really bad. It was still pretty early that they hadn't gotten the rural roads plowed yet. So we got there, and they had gotten his heartbeat back, and they said on his own. They didn't have to shock him or give him, they did give him CPR, of course. And they did get his heartbeat back, and they said he did it on his own, whatever that means. I guess they probably stopped CPR to see if his heart would start on its own again, and it did. So that gave me a lot of hope. So We got to the hospital and they, got him all ready to go and be transported by helicopter to a trauma center. And it's hard for me to remember because it's really an emotional subject. But somebody brought my car there, and there was a doctor, a specialist there, and I think he had a fancy Mercedes or some shit, but I'm not sure if he's a neurologist or that doesn't matter. He said he had to go up there to the hospital and that he would give us a ride there. And so he gave us a ride all the way up there because it was, oh my gosh, probably a good hour ride. And my son got there, I believe, in 16 minutes, something like that. So yeah, helicopters super fast, and that's why they use them, obviously. I mean, I might be talking stupid here, but I'm just going through some of the emotions. So I got up there to the hospital. He gave us the ride up there, and I started calling people. Well, of course, I went and checked on him, and they had him. Yeah, I know I'm not supposed to say a lot, but that's because I have a hard time with words. Not normally, but when it comes to trauma and things like that. I'm trying to find the right words without being too graphic or dramatic. So they were taking care of him. That was the easy part to say. They were taking care of him. I was making phone calls to relatives that needed to know what was going on. And he was there for quite some time. I would go in and check on him. And, he's all prepped. I'm being gentle. And they had a lot of things going on. They had to keep doing CPR. There isn't a machine, not back then, I don't know about now because I have not experienced this since, thank God. But they had to do manual CPR the entire time because that's just the way it is. And because I decided, yes, he should be an organ donor. So they had to keep doing CPR. They couldn't let him go because they had to keep his heart going and his blood, keep going. And the thing is, the reason I let him go, I let him die, was because he was brain dead. Otherwise, if I hadn't let him go and he would have survived, he would have been a vegetable. And I either wanted him the way he was or I didn't want him at all. There was no reason to put everybody through that kind of responsibility and put him through that. And thanks a lot, my monitor just turned on, damn it. So I decided to let him go, but I wanted him to be an organ donor. And his dad, my first husband, they came to me and they said, we have a serious question to ask you. And I said, okay. I mean, I was like 20. And I said, okay. And they said, do you want his body donated to science? Or if there's any organs. They couldn't do any organs because it was leukemia, and that's blood cancer, is what they told me. So they wanted to know if I wanted to donate his body. And I believe I said no, because I was young. So now I decided, they came up to me and they said, we have a serious question to ask you. And I looked at them and I said, yes, yes. I didn't even let them get the chance to get the whole question out. It was simple yes. So they said, okay, glad to know that, because then they have to keep doing CPR in order to keep him not alive, but to keep the blood flowing, to keep the organs to get the blood. Then there are only certain organs that they could have used because he suffered from hypothermia, and that destroyed a lot of his organs. So, of course I said yes, and I think it was around, I want to say 1:30 that we got to the hospital, maybe 2 o'clock that we got up to the trauma center hospital. And I think it was around 5:30 when I knew that was the end. I said, I'm going home. I said, there's no purpose for me to stay here. For what? And I never say goodbye. Ever. I said, I'll see you later, buddy. And then, that was after going in by him a few times, looking at him, talking to him. I'm not going to go into graphic detail because it's no. So, anyway, somebody had brought my car up to that hospital, and they let me drive home. I just lost my son, and I insisted on driving. And I think what it was control. I needed to have some sense of control because I was so out of control. And I did drive home, and obviously lived. So then got home and started the phone calls. I spent the first 24 hours calling people. 24 hours. I was completely exhausted. So anyway, the ironic thing, if you want to call it that, well, the man who got Tony's organs, the only ones that were feasible, I don't think that's the right word, but the only ones that were able to be harvested was his kidneys and his pancreas. And a 34-year-old man, my son was 8, and a 34-year-old man received those organs. And I guess it was many years that he struggled to stay alive, because those are organs that don't do well normally, where other ones, he's probably, I'm sure he has to take medication for the rest of his life in order to keep the rejection from happening, because that's usually what happens, is the organs get rejected and then they fail. So I was going to say, the ironic thing is that where we moved down here to, he lives like an hour and a half away. The sad part of that was his mom took care of everything. All the communication. She would send me a card for my birthday, for his birthday, for the day he passed away, for like every occasion she would send cards. Sweet woman. And it's been years since I've talked to her. and I looked her up on Facebook, and I messaged her a couple years ago, and I didn't get, now you know I gotta do my readjusting here because my butt gets sore from this chair. It's an office chair. So I messaged her since then for, you know, a couple years, a couple times I messaged her. And then now, seeing as they're so close, I started messaging anybody that had her last name. I don't believe I messaged him, and I should have, because truth be told, I'm very bitter. You know, you see those wonderful commercials of, oh, I donated my, you know, my lungs, or how you can't donate your lungs. Stupid me. You know, I donated my son's lungs, or my son's heart, or, you know, the organ donation program. They took part in that, and I met, you know, the recipient, and they're doing so good, and they're so grateful and so happy, and, you know, you hear that, you see that, and for me, unfortunately, it's not the case. He has survivor's guilt. He wrote me a letter once, and I could barely read it. It was, I don't know, maybe 3 sentences, maybe. And he refuses to talk to me, and that makes me bitter. Should I be bitter? Probably not. I should be grateful and proud of my son for helping somebody else live, but I can't not knowing that he has survivor's guilt. And the thing is even his mom told me that I guess they had problems before the transplant. They're having family issues or something like that. I don't really know. She didn't really explain, because I ended up, like I said, messaging all these people, whoever had their last name. I know, ballsy, but I should message him. I really should, because where's the gratitude? Now that's selfish on my part, but the bitterness. And his mom said that he doesn't want to talk to me. He doesn't want to talk about it because the recipient, my son, was only 8, and he feels guilty. And I'm like, what the fuck do you feel guilty about? You're alive. You should be grateful. You should want to talk to me. And maybe that part's a little selfish, but still, you know, at least talk to me. Make me feel better that you're better. You know, that is what my big spiel is. I want to make sure he's doing well, because for so many years he was constantly going to the hospital with complications, and now he rarely goes to the hospital, and I was really glad to hear that. You know, I am really proud, but I'm bitter. And maybe I should talk to my therapist about that, but I'll forget by then. That's why I usually keep a note in my phone. I have a notepad, and I keep notes. I keep lists. I'm a list taker. But yeah, so back to what I was talking about was, you know, I rode in the ambulance with them. You know, we're going as fast as we can, and lights and sirens, and I see all the fire trucks, and they've got the lights and sirens, and it's been almost 24 years, and I still lose my shit. I start screaming. I just lose it. I can't help it. You know, my therapist, yes, his idea of imagine that they're helping somebody. My mind doesn't work that way. And it didn't even work that way before all this happened. I was 18 years old and saw a fire truck, and it was like Christmas Eve, and it affected me then. I've always helped people. When I was 4, I would push men around, old men, veterans that had no legs. I was 4 years old. I would push them around in the mall. You know, I've always been that way. But to have that kind of bitterness eats me alive. Not gonna cry. My last therapist, he was a psychologist, and he didn't talk much. I always did like I do now. I did all the talking. And before I would leave, I said, well, you know, I guess I'll see you next week. And we really didn't get very far. And he goes, yeah, we did. I made you cry. I'm like, gee, thanks. You're a lot of help. But I find that the men therapists don't talk much. They listen, which is fantastic. And I do what I'm doing here, talk a lot, because you have like 45 minutes, maybe an hour. You have a lot to get out in that amount of time. There's a lot on my plate every single time. And I see him every 2 weeks. But I've only been seeing him for a few months. So I have a lot of catching up to do. But I got chapped lips. Where the hell did that come from? I have issues, I'm telling you. Don't get old. I am not sure what I'm going to call this. Oh, as for the ambulance and the police today, I'm trying to hold it back. We were at the stoplight, and there was the ambulance, the fire truck, the police. And I thought, well, on the other side of the fire truck is a vehicle that had gotten hit or something. And the ambulances and fire trucks, there's a beacon or something up in their vehicle that they can change stoplights from red or green to red. So we got there, and all of a sudden it turned red. So there was no sirens, but we were right next to it. Sorry. I'm trying. And the ambulance left. And the fire truck pulled up. And it was a very small motorcycle, maybe like a moped. And you could hardly tell what it was. It was destroyed. It was just a small pile of metal. And the thing is, I was able to pretty much hold it together before that. With the lights, because there was a fire truck. The ambulance was in front of the fire truck. And then on the way home, because they had left, and on the way home, we looked and we could see that it wasn't even like a full motorcycle. It was like a small moped, a small little motorbike that was just a small pile of metal.
Maybe that's why the ambulance didn't have its lights and sirens on. You know, I don't know what I became. I used to be an optimist, and then I was a pessimist, and now I've realized that I'm a realist. I'm sorry if this video upsets you. I will put a disclaimer, because everything has a fucking disclaimer. I will put a disclaimer that it has emotional content, but I had to explain some things, and I think it's a pretty good video to shut me up. That's how I am. I'll have a breakdown, and then I'll say something funny to cover it up, to try to make it better, to try to make other people laugh when things are sad. And I'm sorry that I got so emotional. I am sorry, but I'm not. I think this is a really good video to explain triggers, to explain why some people are the way they are. You know, I have the PTSD for what I went with my son. Well, that carries over into life for the rest of your life. I don't care what anybody says. So, anyway, I have to blow my nose. I'm sorry if this upset you. I will put a disclaimer on it, that it has some emotional content. But by now, you know that. And then it'll be people's choice if they want to watch it or not. But, you know, I'm human. I have one hell of a sense of humor, believe it or not. It'll come through eventually. I have a sassy mouth. I have a sassy attitude. People love me for it. But the whole point of this video was to explain triggers. And this was a really good example of triggers. So I think I'm gonna put that in my I can't think anymore. Crying for me is exhausting. It takes everything out of me. So we're up to 33 minutes. It's probably my longest video yet, but I don't want to have an icky nose. And that's my nose ring, by the way, if you can't see it. But now my nose is driving me nuts. Sniffles drives me crazy. So I will maybe make a video later that hopefully will be a little bit more upbeat. But this is just what happened today, and I wanted to share it. I felt it was a good topic to share, absolutely. And how the things you maybe don't realize are triggering you, and maybe you do need to talk to somebody about it. And I am available. I have an email. I have a phone. If it's that bad, I will accept phone calls, and that's probably not a good idea. So it has to be pretty severe and not long like my videos. But I will try to make a video later. Maybe I'll look up some dirty jokes. I don't know. So until then, take care of yourself.